In the quiet moments before the world wakes up, there's a place where pain meets peace, where every breath feels like a prayer and grief stands still. We carry the weight of what was and search for meaning in the smallest things. And sometimes all it takes is one moment to remind us we're still here, still healing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you stories around death, dying, and grief, all the messiness that comes in between, with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before we get started, I would like to say, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And most importantly, maybe you know someone who could benefit from the conversations that we have. Do me a favor and share this along with them. And one other thing, this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments for either myself or my guests, please put them in the comments section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. One other thing, this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my next guest. Guys, help me welcome Caroline Rena to the show. Caroline, how you doing?
Hey, I'm wonderful. I'm really great. It's a little hot down here in Florida, but other than that, I'm like schwitzing online. For those of you who know what it means, it's sweating.
I love it. I love it. You know, there's nothing else like a good, nice summer day, with nice weather and some amazing things going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
Of course, and all the craziness that's going on in the world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. So tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Oh my gosh, that's like 35 years worth of conversation. So basically, my name, as you see, is Caroline Rena, and at this point in time, I have my podcast as well, which is called Awakening Soul Divinity, and it's on YouTube and Spotify, Apple, and anyway, we'll figure that out. But what my intention with that podcast is, as a community, I am also I do grief work and trauma work with people. I'm kind of moving into some other avenues within that, getting it bigger, because obviously we need to be focusing on that at some point when people are ready to take the leap and do their grief work. And so that's what I'm preparing to do, is to help with that. And at the same time, I have, these projects and everything that I've been working on. And my whole life basically has been, I think I picked this life, Tony, to understand what trauma is and then understand what grief is. And so that's been over 35 years worth of my journey. It's a healing journey, and it's a deep dive, and it's a come back out. And so kind of that's what it is. And just to be honest, I've never done a live, so this should be very interesting, and we'll see how this goes. Did that answer your question?
That did answer my question. Let's talk about how you got into this work, because I love the fact that you said that, you kind of chose this life. And I think we talked about this before. I think this life kind of really chose us, right? It said, we're going to put you through some of the craziest stuff and let you figure it out along the way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I agree. Well, I have this thing where, like, as souls, before we came down to the planet, we decided we wanted to grow in certain areas. And to me, that was compassion and trust and joy and all these things. The challenge that I came across was, that's the whole work in and of itself, is the opportunities that we get in life are the things that create that, what we get to heal from, right? So, and it doesn't, we have free will. So we kind of walk into these situations, so to speak, and we learn, we crash, we burn, we learn, we come out on the other side. And I think you asked me what it was that got me to this, to the grief work. Is that what you said? Okay. Yeah. So basically what happened with me was, aside from other like childhood traumas and military sexual, they call it trauma, I call it harassment. It's the same thing to me. But and then I went through something called parental alienation, and that is something where generally in a high conflict divorce, or even an intact family, one parent who is generally a narcissist and the other parent who is generally an empath come together in this relationship. And that's a whole nother conversation about empaths. We can, you can watch my podcast about that part of it. But as I was going through the process of healing from losing my children through that, and keep in mind, I regained a relationship with my son and working on one with my daughter, hopefully. And so as I was moving the process, kept coming back to like for children when they're alive. And I couldn't figure it out. And I was like racking my brain trying to figure this thing out. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And this went on for 26 years. And because there's no answer to any of this stuff. And so basically what happened was in 2018, like this went on from 2000 to 2003 and beyond, because it continues. But in 2018, my mother died at the end of the year, and that's when my grief showed up. And what was so powerful for me was I was able to not only release that grief, because I never really had a relationship with my mother, so that's my childhood trauma story, that I was able to cry and work through the process, not only for her, but then it touched back on everything that I had never grieved on. And so when I started recognizing this thing, I was like, well, this is interesting. And how can I learn more about this so I can continue my process and then help other people? So that's kind of how I ended up looking at it. I mean, that's like the short of it. I don't know how long this podcast is going to go, because
you're fine.
There's just a lot to it. I mean, yeah, so it's just an important thing, and people don't understand because I don't believe we've been taught correctly how to grieve or how to hold space for others in grief. And so that's what my contribution is, I suppose, to this process, is to help people, and especially with children when they grieve, because a lot of times we're taught to, shut people down because it makes us feel uncomfortable. So that's not, in fact, I just saw a post on Facebook today where someone had asked, my daughter's crying uncontrollably because our dog died and, all this stuff. And she's like, well, what can I do? And people started giving her advice like, oh, have her do art, have her do this, have her do that. But she's not done grieving, right? She needs to grieve. And for people to be able to hold that space for a child or an adult without doing your best not to feel uncomfortable with that, because it will make you feel uncomfortable. That's what needs to get taught. That's what we get to teach out there and show people that there's a better way of doing it, because we're meant to grieve as a human. So, yes.
I think, grief, and we've talked about this, my thoughts on grief is the deepest human connection that you can ever have with anyone, right? Because it takes away everything and leaves you vulnerable to your bare bones. Mm-hmm. And allows for you to be open and honest about what you're going through, as long as you're surrounded by people that see what you're going through, can hear and validate the things that you're feeling. Even can be there to help you find the answers to those questions that you may have. And you said something, like we as the human civilization, we don't know how to grieve. We don't even know how to process those emotions. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, right?
Mhm.
Trying to say, oh, well, it's this and maybe it's this, all of these different things. And I think that's where our experience comes in, right? Because we allow people the option and the opportunity to
Mhm.
be able to explore those things that work for them.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
the depthness that it goes through, the trauma, the addictions, the mental health, all of these different things where people may want to separate. I think that's where we come in and bring them together and go, no, all of these things work in conjunction with everything else. You're going to have to address these things, in order to get to a place of healing. But again, these are just things that I've learned along the way. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's just talk about that a little bit. What
What
can we do as a human race to be able to engage with our grief and develop that relationship that we most definitely need with it in order to become better people?
Well, first of all, we have this awareness that we kind of need to look at. And the awareness is, I'm, at least for me, it was, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. What is this? What's happening with me right now? Why am I trapped in this grief? Why am I trapped in this sorrow? Why am I trapped in this space? Whatever that means for you. And as a human race, and especially in this country, but I'm beginning to think that it's worldwide now with all the things that I'm learning.
Yes.
Cognitive dissonance, I tell you that all the time. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. So I feel like the whole world is like ready to go into a grief session at this point, but they're not ready right now because we're kind of still in the mix. And that's the thing. There's a difference between which we are not taught. First of all, we're taught not to grieve. We're taught to, suppress it. Secondly, we are taught that, or we weren't really taught how to do it, like I mentioned earlier, and we weren't taught how to support it. So I think it's important that we have these conversations to show and guide people how to do that, and to bring out that opportunity to because we're meant to be in joy. That's our higher power, God-given, whoever, whatever, higher power you believe in. That's our human right, is to be in joy. And we can't be in joy if we're experiencing all this stuff and staying stuck in the grief. So the first thing basically is to make a choice, to make a choice that you don't want to be stuck in it or trapped in it anymore.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, because some people feel as if they don't have a choice, right? That they've experienced so much trauma, so
Mhm.
much chaos in their life, that they oftentimes don't see the other side of that journey that they are going through. And a lot of times people go back to a place to where it's comfortable. When they start to even see a glimpse of what they can have on the other side of their grief, their trauma, their addiction, it scares them, because it's a different life from what they're used to, right? It's one full of freedom, one full of happiness, one full of joy
Mhm.
and love, and good choices, good people.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the trap comes in, because we get so used to life, um, life being life and all, right? And saying, well, you don't get the chance to do this. This is just the way that it is. Because and I say this from my own perspective, because I was the same way.
Yeah.
We go through so much in life that when you have 20, 30, 40 years of just trauma and chaos and grief, it's really hard to get your mind out of survival mode and
Mhm.
start to look at the life of saying, I'm tired and I want something different.
Sure. And there's a reason why we're caught up in that, though. It's like it's a physiological thing. So when we have a trauma as a child, we usually start there, whether it's in utero or, between the ages of 0 and 7. We go through something and it kind of locks in this trauma, and trauma is a cycle. It's not like Oprah Winfrey and some psychiatrists did a book together, and it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. And what happens to us is we have an experience as a child, and we don't, especially because our parents and grandparents, everybody's programmed to be protective of themselves, and we've been doing this for generations, so we get into this situation as a child, and it's like a loop, and the cycle of the trauma never closes. So as we get older, what you were talking about, it's a continual thing where we don't feel like you can't just one day, well, you can, some people can, I guess, but I think they call it complex PTSD. That's what I like to use, where it's kind of stacked, the trauma stacked, one thing after the other, and it's kind of repetitive, but that also leads to our soul's growth, so that's why I call them opportunities. And when we get stuck in that trauma that we experienced, we feel like we have no way out. And a lot of times, especially for empaths, and I think I'm an empath. You're an empath, right? We already had that.
I am.
Especially for empaths, it's like, for starters, we can feel everybody's, feelings except our own. And then we don't even want to look at our own because we're so busy wanting to help everybody else that we forget about ourselves, and it's like, That's not how you do it, apparently. But it takes a long time to figure this out because we are not taught. And I feel like that's why you and me and, people I've been meeting consistently recently who work in this field, we seem to be coming together because we're here to support that for other people.
Right.
Yeah, I think, and here's the thing. Like I said, the intention is joy. So yeah, it stunk. It was awful going through the things that we've gone through throughout our lives, and maybe we're in it now. And there is another side. The challenge is being able to make that decision and decide, when we stay stuck in a victim state, we give our power away. And when we give our power away, we don't have a way to step into our lives or step out of the grief. We just stay stuck in that same repetitive cycle over and over and over and over again. And then it could cause addictions, and it could cause all kinds of different things to happen. So those are results. Those are not who you are, just so you know.
I mean, I love that. I love that right there. And you actually said something, where you've probably been told this before. I know I have. People have told me that I was cold or something like that. And I've had to tell people, like, no, it's not that I'm cold. It's because, if there's a situation, I analyze the full situation. I look at the whole thing. And I get to choose. And I think this is where people really get confused at, because most people are very reactive in their emotions instead of responsive. I started choosing what deserved the emotions, right? And if I looked at a situation and I knew that it wasn't mine, but I knew that this individual was trying to bring me into their world to experience their emotions, I would go, no, this isn't mine. So why would I choose to have an emotional reaction to it when I can respond very logically? Because there's no sense of both of us being emotional. And you know what I'm saying? And then the conversation goes in a totally different direction, and no one's going to learn anything, But I think being an empath, and I'm gonna be more specific. Being a dark empath, right? I see beauty in the darkness of a lot of things that maybe people don't see, right? And that's where I'm comfortable at. Like, I don't mind being in the midst of someone else's mud, because that's where I'm strongest, right? And I can look at the situation and go, no, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I know this is what it seems like to you. And what I began to do when I first started this journey, long before I started this journey, I started a, a pastor had said something to me. He says, in every human being's life, you will play three roles on a day-to-day basis all day long. One is the superhero, one is the villain, and one is the victim, right? And when you realize how you play those in order to become a become your own superhero, but then you will become the villain because everything has to have a response to it, right? You know what I'm saying? And you go, oh, well, this person did this to me. And so once you begin to understand those three points of the triangle, you can begin to, if you want to, you can begin to step outside of there, and then you become the observer. And it goes back to a statement that Steve Jobs said: you cannot see the path or connect the dots in your life when you're standing in the midst of it. You actually have to step outside of it and see the path that you've been on and connect the dots then, and realize that the role that you play, which leads to, as we all know, leads to holding yourself accountable, leads to developing a strong sense of grace as you begin to navigate this world, and a strong sense of patience as you begin to develop and learn as you're going through it. Because you're gonna have to as they say, you're gonna have to develop your grief to customize your life, right? In order to fit it, right? Because that's what's going to work for you. We can provide tools, we can provide the space and everything, but it's up to those individuals to customize that to fit them, right?
Yeah, and you have to, because even though we are one, so to speak. Well, not even so to speak. We're all in this together. We are one. However, we have our different experiences and our different personalities and our different makeups and our different who we are as individuals create, like, we all have the same feelings and emotions, but we still do it differently based off of our own experiences and programming. And so, we can give tools to help with this stuff, but everybody's got, like you're saying, when I finally got outside of myself and I was able to observe my life and myself and how I was reacting and all the different things that were going on, I started to recognize different ways of setting myself up within my toolbox and my tools that I pull. And every time I learned a new tool, I'd try it out. And then, whatever tool didn't work, then I'd be like, we'll just stick it back in there. Maybe I'll need it later, whatever, or right. And so that's kind of the point behind this, because it's not one size fits all. This healing journey, we're here to heal our souls, our souls. How did you put it? One heart at a time. What's your
one heartbeat at a time.
One heartbeat at a time. And that's the thing is that even though, like, these are our hearts individually, but there's the heart of creation. And so when we heal from inside our own hearts, it brings that out to creation, and creation shifts. Because if we don't do that, well, we're kind of seeing every minute of every day what the repercussions of that are. So that's why we need to do that. And that's very powerful, Tony, because, we're all still going through it. It's not like I don't have my moments of falling in my hole every so often, but I don't do it as often as I used to do it. Like, I'm going to quote, what is her name? Louise Hay. Louise Hay?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Louise Hay, when she had been doing her work since the 70s, and she was a couple of years, maybe 92 years old when she died or something like that. But when she was 90, I had found a video recording of her saying, I still step in my, we can cuss on here, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I still step in my shit every so often, but now I can step out of it quicker. And that's kind of how I followed it, because it was like, now I'll step in, I'm in it for maybe 10 minutes, giving me enough time to grieve or whatever I need to do, use a tool, and then I step out. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, I would go into it for days, weeks, months, even years. I mean, I was in it for a long time. And now it's very surprising when you get on the other side, how, when you look at it, observe backwards at your journey, what that looks like. And that's pretty cool. But we all can do that. We're all set up to do that. That's the thing. It's like there's not one of us on this planet that's been told that doesn't have the capacity or the desire or even the need to get to do this. So that to me is really important for people to know that, because some people, you do deserve it. I hear people saying all the time that they don't deserve to be happy or joyful or whatever. That's not true. And you say this is what I think I heard you say. You're saying you're like a dark empath, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a piece of that, though, where you're bringing light into the darkness so people can find themselves. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that for my understanding of what you said, because it's just so powerful that you're shedding light on this stuff. And that's why we're here, to do that. And it's very brave, especially for a man in this world. And, I mean, a lot of men are not at a point, not all, but a lot of men are not at a point where they're ready really to step in, because they're still fighting kind of their own demons. And it's sad, because your strength and your power actually holds up the divine feminine, so do your healing work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to add to that, because, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, people have worked so hard to separate them, and not understanding that you need both of them in order to work together, right? And most, so I'm not going to generalize everyone. I'm just going to say, as human beings, male and female, if they're going through something, it's really hard for them to see the joy in life, right? Because people live with an expectation, right? And you also said something earlier too about people not really doing the work, right? And I want to just say, most people don't know that how to do the work. And these tools that they get, people want to be able to use them right away, and it's like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit. Right? They're constantly trying to move it into these different places. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It's not going to fit. So what they do, they try to force it. And so when that piece has so much pressure built up, it pops out, and they're like, well, that wasn't supposed to be that way. And most people don't know how to not blame themselves for the things that they don't know, right? Because we as human beings, we want to pretend like we know everything. We really do. We want to pretend like we know everything. And the truth of the matter is,
don't we?
Yeah, because I mean, think about it, right? You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be smart until they're not, right? And it's just like, oh, what are we doing here? And so when they've been humbled and start to become a fool, they don't understand that being a fool is the key to knowledge and wisdom, right? And so people don't want to be the fool in order to gain the wisdom. They don't. And so, we backtrack a little bit and we go back to what's comfortable to us. Well, I don't want to go this route, right? Because this is my lane over here, not understanding that everything contributes to what you're already doing, right?
Right.
And
Right.
paths that we've been on, no one could have ever told me in a million years that I'd be doing this at all. As
Yeah.
a man,
Yeah.
no one would ever tell me, "Oh, Tony, you're going to be doing grief work. You're going to be talking about this on a podcast. Oh, Tony, you're going to be doing." No, I don't. If you would have told me this 20 years ago, I would probably punch you in your throat. Like, you don't know me, Pam, because I had a totally different idea about the way that my life was going to be. And I'm gonna pop this question. I'll pop this comment up here real quick from a man, Mr. 20%. He says, "I believe having empathy and sympathy is just human, just being human, and being able to cry just shows a compassionate heart." Yes. And I'm going to hand it over to you and get your thoughts and opinions on that.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And the thing about it is that's who we are as humans. We're meant to be that way. We're meant to have empathy and sympathy. We are meant to be kind. We are meant to be compassionate. It's all part of who we are. The challenge is that all these traumas and the grief that we don't let go of tend to get in the way of all that and don't allow us sometimes to have that empathy and sympathy. It's a challenge where, unless we're awake and we can focus on doing that work, like you're talking about, Tony, it's not everybody has it. And I feel like it's because people have been traumatized. That's the impression I have. It's hurt people. It's very hard to be empathetic or sympathetic or both if you've been hurt, because then it becomes about you, because you're so focused on trying to feel better about your life and yourself and all the things that have gone on with yourself. A lot of people can't empathize with other people. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming, I feel, for them. So, and Mr. 20%, I agree with that. I believe that is a absolutely correct statement. And it's just a process of healing in some cases, or in a lot of cases, to get to be able to do that. You can't just automatically make it happen. People have to be ready, I feel, to do the work to create that space in them, because some people don't even know what that is. They grew up in an environment that didn't provide empathy or sympathy. So they're not going to know what that is. And thank you for having a compassionate heart and saying that. So, yeah. And I had a couple of things I wanted to touch on also, of what you said, Tony. Like the first thing, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, it doesn't matter what gender we believe we are, whatever. All of us even have that balance. We have to have that balance within ourselves. We're all going to have that. It's not like bringing a female or a female thinking gender together with a male or a male thinking gender to come together. It's within. Everything is within. As within, so without. As above, so below. The second thing I was thinking, or I was looking at, was a lot of times, because of the programming that we've had within the spiritual communities and metaphysical communities even, and the religious communities and all that, a lot of times what we do is we tend to spiritually bypass. And that's why we don't do the work, because we think that a connection, a lot of us, not everybody, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of us feel like a connection with that higher power is going to save us. Well, then there's the material world. Then there's the part where we're connected to the earth. Then there's the part where we have a human body. Then there's the part where we're connected to other beings, other souls, other humans. And if we don't do the work, all that stuff that's stuck inside of us, if we don't heal it, is going to come out with, I've heard, sideways. It's going to come out sideways on other people. And by doing spiritual work with this work, that's what creates that balance, similar to the divine masculine, divine feminine within. And then the key component with all this that I've discovered in my journey is being gentle with yourself, because we can be pretty hard on ourselves. We're probably our own worst enemies. And if we're not gentle with this healing journey, if we're not gentle with ourselves, we'll beat ourselves up, just like emotionally, mental, physical, and spiritual beatings happened in our past,
Yeah.
So that's important that you're gentle. And then I had to say, when you were talking about the fool, I'm like, I started getting into this whole Native American, because Native Americans, what is the coyote I think coyote, no, that's the trickster. It's the same thing. I don't know. Anyway, the fool is revered by many cultures, because when we have to behave like a fool in order to recognize that behavior, in order to step out of that behavior. And we have mirrors outside of us who help us recognize that fool behavior to help us to step out. So that's what I wanted to say about the fool thing. I thought that was interesting that you brought that up, because we're humans. We're going to act like that sometimes, So
that's very, very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question, because this is something that has always interested me since I've started this journey, and
Okay.
I've come up with my own answers, in the way that I perceive it, and things like that. Perception is reality, but I try to stick with reality as close as I can, although it's all smoke and mirrors, right? And so
more than
now,
we all know.
yeah, and people are too afraid to look past the smoke and mirrors and see reality for what it is, and see what role we actually play in the reality that we live in. So now my question would be, which one do you think is the hardest? The actual grief that we experience, the trauma that we experience, or the healing that must come into play in order to allow us to experience?
Well, this is a really powerful, cool question. Thank you for asking that, because the first thing that popped into my head was that it's a pendulum. I think they're both equally challenging, and they are both equally powerful. And for us to swing, I mean, the healing journey to me is swinging back and forth on both sides until we finally, when we release everything, we finally get sent to the center. And that's where we're meant to be, is in the center. Does that make sense when I say that?
It definitely makes sense. I was actually thinking, as you were saying that, because I could see the pendulum, right, on both sides, the healing, well, the trauma and the grief, right? Because you can't have one without the other. And I know there's people that would say, oh, you can have grief without trauma. And, and in a lot of ways, they're both correct, because you don't necessarily have to lose someone in order to experience grief, right?
Right.
Like, you can lose your job, you can go through life and be depressed and things like that. And that comes with its own set of grief. So grief has this multitude of vast area lanes that we can go down, and they're all correct. It's about your approach as you begin to walk down and begin to dissect it. And this is where I say, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to clarify something, though, because I hear what you're saying, and I maybe not have answered it the same way you were asking it, because like you were saying, what I heard you say was trauma and grief on one side, and then healing on the other side. So that was the pendulum. You did. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I separated them.
Right. And so I put it in that where it's, to me, trauma and grief are connected. So I think that's why I answered it the way you, when you asked it. So with trauma and grief separated, you're still going to swing back and forth, but I don't feel like there's a disconnect between the two of them. I feel like one creates the other, and the other heals the creation. One creates, I don't know what you heard. One creates, like trauma creates grief. Grief heals trauma. So, but sometimes grief can cause trauma when we don't know how to grieve. So I think that the healing process falls within that, because there's where we get to teach people a better version of grieving. So healing can actually blossom rather than be out of reach,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, I like that because it gives a different way of looking at it. And I just want to clarify when I see the pendulum going back and forth, what I see most of the time is that, when you have grief and trauma, what I'm saying, they're swinging back and forth. And once these begin to hit in the middle, they, what I'm saying, you got portions of you that don't fit you, right? Because grief is meant to change you. It is meant to change the way that you look at life, the way that you show up in life, the way that you present yourself, and things like that. So it's when I see that, it always takes me back to a comic book version where you see these things hitting each other, and you see the sparks come out, right?
Yeah.
It is like you got that more spiritual self that's coming out every time it's getting hit. It's kind of shaky, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's still kind of distorted until
Yeah.
everything is beat outside of you. And I
Yes.
know this is a crazy way of looking at it, but as these things are being beat outside and things like that, the version of you that appears in its totality is the version of you that you are authentically who you are, right? Because there's
Of who
nothing
you are.
else.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
because there's nothing else to hide. Because as you're being beat around, because this whole hurricane, this whole path of grief and trauma that we're on, addiction, the mental health issues that come along with it, are versions of ourselves that we've put together to protect ourselves from what the at us. And once you realize that everything that's being thrown at you is not there to destroy you, it's there to help you become who you are meant to be, the better version of yourself with patience and grace and empathy, right? With compassion for the next person. Those are the people that show up, that sees the person walking down the street, the homeless person or the addict, and you will actually stop and have a conversation with that person just because you want to let them know that you see them.
Yes.
These people that are being neglected. And I think that's where we see those individuals and go, I see you. Let me go over here and grab some lunch. Let's sit down. I want to have lunch with you. Right? I want you to tell me the story of how you got to where you are. Not to judge you, not to talk down on you, but to look at you and encourage you and say, tomorrow's another day. Right? Because you may see something in that version, in that person that someone else don't see, and those words can actually save a person's life.
Yeah. And if I might add, that's a good, I'm glad you brought up that, because I actually had a conversation with a homeless person outside of a GNC store one time. I was going into it, and he when I came out, he stopped me and just started talking to me, and it was like the universe stuck this guy in my path intentionally, because he somehow, I don't know what he didn't tell me his story, but what he did say, it made me feel like he like made me see that in a different light. It was like he had to give me this message. And people come into our lives that quickly for messages too, and it's like, for us, not just for them, for us to see them. Yes, absolutely, 100%. But I was watching him, and I walked in there, and maybe because I gave him eye contact or whatever, and I looked at him, I did what I normally do. I just smiled and walked into the store. And when I came back out, it was like my whole entire world shifted because of this guy. I don't know what happened to him, but he's human. They're human. And not most people who are homeless nowadays are homeless paycheck. They're still working and they're homeless. So there's all kinds of reasons behind why that kind of thing happens. But there is humanity in that. And there's I mean, that part of it just touched my heart when you said that. I don't even know if I said anything about what you were talking, because I just remembered I had this like visual of this guy, and he was such a beautiful soul. It was the most incredible thing I'd experienced it. But maybe when we give ourselves an opportunity to just, like you're saying, be aware that they're there, and be open to a conversation with them, or be open to helping them or assisting them or whatever we feel drawn to doing, you know. I don't know, that maybe that's why they're there for our growth.
Yeah, I do understand that, and I definitely agree to that. You know, and I want to add to that as well, because when you allow yourself to be in a space in those moments with those individuals, it's like reading a novel. You let your mind take you to those places and you begin to experience life not just through what you're feeling, but to see life through their eyes of
Mm-hmm.
what they've experienced, right? And the crazy part about it is, Caroline, is that when you allow yourself to do that, you realize that we're more connected than what you ever thought.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You allow yourself to be in that moment where you're like, wow, I can relate to this person. Although this person may have lived a total different life than me, you realize that your paths have been on parallel trajectories for a long time. And just at some point in life, you cross paths with these individuals. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact of the message, right? Because sometimes we look at the messenger and we tend to not hear what they're saying, because we, as you know, sometimes people will say, well, this person don't know what he's talking about because they're still an addict, they're still on, they're still homeless, or they're still doing it, all of these different things. We come up with these different excuses of why we won't allow ourselves to hear the message. And so I always search for the message when I meet people, like,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm always like, what is this person here to give me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or what am I here to give this person, right? And you can, once you get to a certain point, you can distinguish the two. You can distinguish whether or not, if you're there for that individual or if that
Mm-hmm.
individual is here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never supposed to look down on the next person, because the question will always remain, what makes you better than that individual? What makes you better than them? Just because you got a home, just because you got, job, and you said it, most people out there that are homeless still have jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you how many times that part has been truth in my life, where I'm doing everything, good job, right?
You're doing it right.
I'm according to what
Yeah.
society says,
Right.
right?
Right.
But just because I'm doing it right doesn't mean that everything is going to line up the way that it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to look at that and just go, you have to surrender to the process. And I learned this at an early age. When moments like that happen, no matter what was going on with me, I had to be more submissive to the direction that life was taking me. And I realized that it was such a zigzag, up and down roller coaster, journey, that
Straight line.
I had to sit back and just go like this, like, okay, well, whenever you're ready to stop, I'm going to be okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
and
God.
you're so used to getting beat up by life. And, when I say this, most people don't understand the many battles that come along with it. As human beings, we can fight the physical battle.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not used to the spiritual battle, the one that you can't see, the one that you got to fight in your mind and in your heart and in your soul, because those are the ones that's going to shape you or destroy you, depending on your approach. And if you have the strength, after you've been beaten down, exhausted, you have the strength to stand back up and go, what's next?
Which most of us have. I feel like all of us have that strength. We just don't know that we have it, because we've been beaten down so far.
This is very true. And I think it's because
it's in
we get used
there.
to it. Yeah. We just get used to it, right? You know what I'm saying? We get used to the physical fight.
I would like to share. Yeah. No. Right.
And so that, I think, that's where discernment comes in, but more of spiritual discernment. And what I mean by that, your spirit knows what fights that you can fight and what fights that you're not prepared to fight. And I think that's where you have to look within or without outside of yourself. And if you're a person who believes in God, if you don't believe in God, you believe in something. Sometimes you have to believe in that thing right there in order to understand the path that you're on, the fight that you're in. Because more times than I can admit right now, and I have no shame in saying this, I've gotten into those battles that people don't see.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost myself in the darkness where I was so exhausted spiritually that I just threw my hands in the air and said, you know what? I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired, but it's not a physical tired,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm so tired of this that I'm willing. And look, when I say this, I know there's a lot of people out there that can relate to what I'm saying. I was willing to eliminate myself from the game because I didn't know how to win. I didn't know how to play it, right? And it's just like, it's that old saying, you're playing checkers in a world of people playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can change that around and go, you know what, no longer am I playing chess with people. I'm going to see the chessboard for everything that it is. The knights, the pawns, the queens, all of these different things. And where do I fit in? Am I a pawn? Of course, you will always be a pawn in somebody else's game. They would use you to deflect the damage that's coming their way, right? But
Right.
now, what piece on the chessboard are you really? Considering everything that you've
The
gone
queen.
yeah. But
Yes.
not everybody is a queen, though, right?
Well,
Not
that's my
everybody's
choice now.
Yeah, but you get to choose which one you want, right? But
Yeah.
now, when you say that, where does everybody else fit in? Because the king is always supposed to protect the queen. And
Right.
the knights are there to go out there and fight the fight. So who are your knights? Who are your pawns? Who is
Yeah.
your king? And also
Yeah.
who is your queen? It's all chess. That's what
I-
grief is. It's a huge chess game.
Mm-hmm.
And as you begin to move, the goal is not to be checkmate. It's not to allow someone to checkmate you, but you to checkmate yourself in life without doing damage to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And yes, absolutely. I feel like, so the other side of the coin of that and how to get to that, because we've been talking about grief. That's obviously what this whole podcast is about.
Mhm.
And what I've learned based off of a lot of there's two sides of the coin here. There's what you just shared, and also as humans, how we can get through and recognize what that is for us. And for a lot of people, like, okay, so I'm going to go into like the technicalities of trauma and grief and all that kind of stuff real quick, just to give an idea of what it is. So basically, a trauma, grief, feelings, emotions, thoughts can either produce a trauma or create a trauma that doesn't exist, or whatever that looks like. But the thing about it is that feelings and emotions are energy. They're only energy. And we have a tendency to be, because of programming, we have a tendency to be afraid of our own feelings and emotions, because we were taught it's not safe to be, at least as a woman growing up or as a girl growing up, it's not safe to be angry, because somebody's going to stop loving me if I get angry. I'm not the good little girl, all that kind of stuff. And with men at that, our generation time frame, it's not safe to cry, so I can't cry. So all these feelings, this is the point, all these feelings get trapped in our physiology. And what I found is it's an energy that just needs to be released. And the grief helps us to release that energy. And as long as we are able to relate, it'll actually help us learn how to relate to our feelings in a different way. Like back in the day when I was like angry and I couldn't let myself be angry, I'd be angry, but then I'd start crying. And cry angry is different than sadness crying or grief crying, right? It's almost like there's a different tear that comes out. It's the weirdest thing. But the point is that it brings us into relating to our feelings. And once we're able to release this energy out of our nervous system, the anger, the fear, the sadness, the shame, all this stuff comes out of our nervous system. That's when we can start to recognize, the chess game, the game that's being played outside of us, and who we are within that game and how we want to play the game. It opens that world up to us where we're not able to really, I don't like using the word can't because I've been trained not to do that, trained out of that word. But it's like, it gives us an opportunity to play that game differently.
Yes.
If you had seen me 2 years ago, I would be like, I'm hiding from the world. I'm isolating. I'm doing all this kind of stuff because I'm still in my trauma. I'm still in my victim, right? But as I was clearing all this stuff out of my nervous system, because I went from cognitive therapy alone to somatic therapy, which is of the body, clearing that energy out of the body, everything just started connecting. And when it connected, I was able to see, and it's almost like you can start the discernment and you can start to process what you're doing from here out there. And when we are able to discern and be in that space, we're going to also do things differently out in the world. And wouldn't it be nice if everybody would do that? Because this world would be a whole lot different if we all could do the same thing, like clearing out that energy, being able to discern, stepping out into the world in a different space with what Mr. 20% said about the empathy and the sympathy. That's where we can step out with empathy and sympathy, where we aren't doing, in a lot of cases, we're not doing that right now. So I hope that made sense. It's just sometimes my brain is going like, oh my gosh, I got to share this.
You had said something. I'm going to add to what you just said too. Because the other side of the coin is of that as well. I think it leads to the path that we've been on. Right? So not everybody is meant to have an understanding of it, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what makes us who we are, because we dove deeper into wanting to understand what those things meant or what they mean to us. And it also, when it comes down to emotions, right? It was something for me. It was something that I had to learn over a period of time because I never understood them, right? It was like when I saw a person being emotional, I was always looking at them going, what's wrong with you? Right? And so I didn't possess the understanding of empathy and compassion because I had lived in a world where violence was the key to everything, right? Oh, you come and do something to me, I got to go do something back to you. The way I was always taught was, don't allow your emotions don't allow your emotions to put you in a situation to where it will get you killed out here.
That's a protective mechanism. That's normal, right? Yeah.
When I'm gonna share this scenario, this situation with you. Back a long time ago, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I was just getting out of prison, and I was 29, and so I've learned to suppress my emotions to a point to where it didn't make any sense to me, right? Because the last thing that I want to do is get caught up out here and someone takes my life. I had already had this notion in my head that I'm going to die anyway. And, and I was okay with that. But I wasn't going to live my life being emotional or living in fear of what someone else was capable of doing to me, especially when they didn't realize what I was capable of doing to them. Right? It didn't really, and after a while, it just didn't really matter to me. It was like, what? So what? You're killing? You're not special. You know what I'm saying? Because bullets don't have no names, and like you either this is going to work out one way or another for both of us. And I had no fear of it. I had no fear of it. Right? It was like, so what? I've seen so many people die. So what? My time's going to come. I know it is. 4 people just died last week that I was close to. What makes you think I'm going to be afraid to be the next one? Oh, well, don't do me any favors. That's the way I always looked at it. And so emotions was one of those things that I eventually, over a period of time, had to tap into. I had to take a look at them and go, is this what it's like to be a human being? Because I can, and then once I realized that, I began to practice little things. And I go, well, this situation really doesn't cause for this emotion, right? This isn't mine. So why would I waste the time on this emotion in this situation when I can be very rational and respond to it in kind, right? Because I think that makes me more effective and efficient. Is understanding what deserves that energy and what doesn't, what's mine and what is not mine, right? And I think this gives people more of an open window to be more expressive when you allow them that energy that is rightfully theirs to be able to express it freely in a space to where, they feel comfortable.
Yes.
But again,
yes.
Just theories.
And that's, thank you for sharing what, your experience was. And I know from talking, you've shared a lot with me about that kind of thing. And it's like in that kind of environment, obviously you have to protect yourself. So your body, your ego, your physiology, your stress response, everything's going to kick in and what's the word suppress the emotions, because if you're emotional, you're as you're saying, you can't think straight. I mean, because that's the other thing, another physiological thing I learned that I'm going to share with you. When we get into an argument or something happens that causes us to get angry, for example, right? And we're standing there, there's literally, I found this out from a chiropractor who obviously knew what he was talking about. But anyway, when you feel yourself getting angry, and there's like this 2 to 3 seconds split amount of time where you can make a decision to either react or respond. So we're talking about the frontal lobe. We're starting off with the frontal lobe, and someone says something to you and you're like, you can feel it. You feel your blood like rising in your face, or, turning red, face turning, that type of thing. You have like the split second timing to make a decision as to what you're going to do. Because if you allow that to finish the process, what happens is it moves back through into the back of your brain through this is the physiology. It like shunts, all the blood shunts back into your visual cortex or whatever back here. And that's why we see red when we get angry. It's because they say that, right? Because it all goes back here. But if you stop that process, because generally when it goes back here, it turns into rage, right? If you stop the process and you're recognizing it and you're observing yourself, you'll stay in the frontal lobe and you'll be able to make a decision more effectively by just taking, this was the key. It's like, all you have to do is just take a deep breath and come back down. And that gives you the time to come back into the frontal lobe so you can make a decision about what you're going to do, instead of going into that mammalian reptilian brain back there and just letting all hell break loose. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the physiology. So things don't happen just because. This is all because we are human. We have a physiological body, and this is how it responds. And for you to be able to get into that space up here in the frontal lobe to make these decisions, to discern what you're going to do, rather than, especially if you're with somebody that you deeply love and you're about to get angry and go into rage with that person, that's going to cut off a lot in that moment if you don't come out of that space. It's going to hurt things there with that relationship with that person. So in that circumstance, but I feel like it's very important to break that moment, to stay here and say, oh, well, maybe I should give myself a timeout. Hang on, I need to go in the other room, just calm myself down, take some breathing. I promise you I will be back in a few minutes. Just let me go breathe. I don't want to say anything that's going to hurt you or something like that. But if you're in a situation like I've never experienced that, what you were talking about in your late 30s or late 20s. If you're in that kind of a situation, you kind of still need to do the same thing where you keep the frontal lobe online, so you don't get into a situation where it could turn really bad really fast. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does. Okay. Yeah, definitely does. Now let's talk about your podcast. When did you start your podcast?
Okay. I started my podcast in October of last year, and it's called, did I already say what? I can't remember. It's called Awakening Soul Divinity. Mm-hmm. And the reason I started this podcast was because of my own healing journey, my own trauma journey, and my healing journey. And I did it because I wanted to get used to talking online again. And I've done interviews before on an old podcast in 2022 when I was kind of sharing my healing journey and sharing videos about what my experiences were and everything. And so I decided, after thinking about this, I was like, well, look what happens on the other side. Look what I can do. I can help people now. I can do something. I can make the world a better place, whatever that is, from my experiences, from my traumas, from the grief, from all that stuff. And so I decided to do that because I wanted to take that experience and share it with, initially, I think it's with anybody we can get to hear it, but initially it was empaths and highly sensitive people, old souls, who I feel are on this path to help shift the world. And that's only 10% of the population. So if we can get them going, and connected and everything and healed, then maybe we've got a chance here. But so my experience from going from trauma to triumph, so to speak, and being able to share other people, such as yourself, Tony, because I actually just uploaded your video to edit it today. So, because I don't normally do live because it just gets me all over the place. But anyway, so I like to share similar stories like Tony's. Like, he went through hell and back, and look what he's doing now, and that, I think people, when they hear your story, somebody's going to connect with your story and see what you're doing now to help other people go through, because that's what that's why you're here. You experience those things to help people, basically, who have gone through similar things that you've gone through, because they can connect with that. And so that's what the podcast is about, going from that trauma through the grief to doing something in the world that can help change things, basically. So that's in a long nutshell, bad elevator speech.
No, I love it.
Thank you.
And it makes total sense. And as far as being in hell, I never really left it. I just started to get comfortable because I realized that there's so many people coming through it, right? That I didn't want people to have to walk through it and try to figure it out on their own. And so when you get comfortable sitting in that element, that people will actually trust you, because most people, when you're going through something crazy like grief or trauma or dealing with addiction and things like that, most people who are not capable of being in that space will leave you alone in there. And that's where I find that people find themselves in really bad situations. And I always told myself, you know what? I don't ever want to leave you in a place to where you may be unfamiliar. So I'm just going to wait here for you, right? And walk with you until you get to the other side. If I to step out, it's only because I realized that in these intervals of this journey, you have to do this alone. Right? You're going to have to go through it because it has nothing to do with me. Now, I'll be on the outside with the towel and some water to throw on you, but I'm going to push you right back up in there because I'm excited to see who you become on the other side. I know it sounds crazy, but
No, it's not.
I'm a firm believer. You know, I always tell people, look, I'm a firm believer. I want you to hit your version of rock bottom because that's the only time that you're going to stand up, find the strength, make a decision, and become the person who you're supposed to be. So I need you to hit your version of rock bottom.
I used to always say, I've got to interrupt here. Hold on. I got to interrupt because that version of rock bottom, I used to say, if you're this close to the ground, then there's only one way you can go. And it's not down because there's a block there. It's only, so yes, thanks. That's good. I like that.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger said it best. He goes, when you fall down, you realize that the ground is right there.
Right.
You can't go any further than that, unless you start digging your own hole, you know. And I've done this before. You know, like, oh, give me my shovel. I'm gonna dig the rest of it out because there has to be a tunnel under here somewhere. And then you realize that you're down at the bottom. You're looking up and you're going, well, that didn't work out too well for me.
Well, and I'm laughing at that because I've done that.
I think we all have. We all have.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the beautiful part about it. Like, we laugh about it now, but you're in the mix of it. It is not funny. It is
not
some
pretty.
of the most painful stuff that you will ever go through, which was the reason why I asked about what you thought about the healing, the trauma, or the healing, the grief, and the trauma, you know, and how those things worked out. So it's always good to understand how other people perceive, you know, this process. It's all designed to make you become the best version of yourself to show up in the world, right?
And it's I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, you know, like for having these experiences, like your experiences with prison and all the other things that you went through, so you can talk with people and help walk them through things when they're ready, right? You know, the same thing, I look at it from a military standpoint. I was in the Army for 8 years, and there's, you know, that brotherhood, sisterhood thing there where, especially combat veterans, and I've been around combat veterans a lot throughout the time I was in, and now especially, where it's like this trust that you've been in the circle, within the circle, so they know, you know, right? And that even though I'm not a combat veteran, I was enough involved where I could experience what they've experienced. And so I get it, right? Just like you get it. And so they seem to be, each group, whatever, you know, people in addiction, people who've been raped, people who have been in all kinds of different situations. If you've experienced it, they know you've experienced it, and there's already a connection there. So if you can get out, on the other side, they're more apt to look at you and say, how do you do that? How did you do that? You know, it's almost like you're a lighthouse to them. And that's so important. And need I throw this in again? Grief is part of the process. So
it is.
Yeah. So it has to be there. But
well, all of it is part of the human experience.
Absolutely. Yep.
And the path that has been chosen to you. I know a lot of people out there like to say, oh, I chose this. And sometimes the paths are just chosen to you. And I look back and I say, if I had to choose a path that I was on, I would have chose something different. But now I say that to say this. I look at where I'm at now, and I'm thankful that I'm on the path that I'm on. Does it allow me to keep doing what I dreamed about when I was a kid? Yes, it does. Right. And there's a whole lot of things that happened that I wasn't even expecting to happen, like becoming an author, I'm an introvert, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm so comfortable with being alone that it's not even funny. Like, leave me alone. I can stay in the house for 4 years and not have any sort of contact with people.
Yeah,
I promise you.
I get it.
this phone right here, I could take this and throw this in the ocean right now and walk off. And the only reason why I keep it is because I know that there's people out there that care about me.
Yeah.
Right. But I am preparing people when the time comes. I am taking the phone and I'm throwing it away. Don't come looking for me. Please don't. Right? Please don't come looking for me. And people are like, "Oh, I will find you anyway." I was like, "Not where I'm going. Not where I'm going. All right, just let me be at peace." Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but life can be a really good place if you allow it to be. If you understand the totality of what is taking you or what is doing for you in order for you to become your authentic self. We're all created by design. We all have a mission and a purpose in this world. It's how aligned are you with your purpose, and are you willing to walk that path as best as a person can, and allow yourself to learn everything that you need to learn. But also, can you become a teacher and share knowledge with other people?
That's the point.
Maybe they don't have to struggle the way that you did, right? So now, I guess, this is a great conversation. So as we begin to wrap this up, Caroline, and
slowly. Slowly.
See, this is what happened on your podcast. This is exactly what happened.
I know. Trust me, I know.
And I knew it was going to happen. It's such great stuff, man. Such great stuff. So I only have a few more questions left for you. My first question would be, how can people find you?
Oh, well, are you putting it in a description?
Well, you never sent it to me.
I didn't? Yeah. Okay, we'll have to rectify that. Okay.
You're gonna have to rectify this. I'm over your stuff already. That's all it is.
Okay. So the podcast, Awakening Soul Divinity, is on YouTube. And there's also a link if you like listening rather than watching it on video. There's mindbodyspirit.fm, which will take you to Spotify or Apple. And I don't know if there's a way to, I know I'm also on Amazon, but I don't know how to get to that part. And then I have a website that I put that on, awakeningsouldivinity.com. And as I move forward with doing this, shifting up on the grief work, and Tony and I have been talking about this, and I've been talking to other people as well. I also have another website which hasn't been updated yet, but I'm working on it because I do it myself, like I do everything else myself. Have you ever seen that emoji with the head blown off? That's my head.
That's why I started laughing.
That's me. So CarolineRena.com, CarolineRena.com. I'll have the information on there as well. I was mentioning earlier when we first started this opportunity experience that I went to with my kids. So I'm also in a documentary called Erasing Family, which can be found pretty much everywhere that videos are at. And it basically goes into how kids can reunite with their parents again. So that's an option. I don't include that because that's mostly part of my journey, but for anybody who's experienced parental alienation, it's there for you. And then LinkedIn and Facebook, I've got a couple of groups you can join. I have a community on Facebook called Awakening to Soul Divinity. As a group on Facebook, you can join that. And I think that's it. I'm not sure. I don't know, but you can find all the links on my others on the website and in the podcast on YouTube.
And once I get the information to everybody, I'll have that in the YouTube channel as well, so you guys will be able to go check it out. So my second question would be, if Caroline had a superpower, what would it be?
Okay. Yes. You said you had other questions?
Yeah. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
What?
A superpower. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Well, I actually know of two or so my empathy is a superpower. Holding space for people and being able to read people and see what they're, this is the most challenging one I've got. It's like I can see you and who you are before you can.
Mm.
That has been giving me trouble my whole life, but now I'm starting to get an understanding of why I have it.
You know, as scary as this may sound, I can relate to exactly what you just said right there. And people wonder why, once I figure out who they are, that I stay away from.
Well,
Right?
that's part of it. I mean, it gives discernment for people who have negative energy or
Mhm.
lower energies or whatever you want to call it. Again, negative is not necessarily a word I like using, but lower energies. But this is for people who I want to see expand in their life. And I know they can. And I can see their power and I can see their strength and I can see what's inside of them. And they're like still holding on to that trauma.
Mhm.
And those are the people in my past that I used to just go, oh my God, I know the answer. I know the answer. I just got to download. I know the answer, and I'd share it with them and they're like, they weren't ready for it. That's the superpower that I'm talking about, not the discernment with it, but that's the one, because you can't make someone change when they're not ready to change. I learned that the hard way.
Very, very true. Very,
Right.
very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
My last question to you would be, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
I feel like from my personal experience and those that I have connected with, that it's never too late to start your journey of healing. And there's a mantra that I use, which is be willing, be courageous, be free. It's something I thought about like 8 years ago and I've been following it. But then I learned something, and that something is choice. You have a choice. We all have choice. We can choose our choices or we can choose not to choose. And that's still a choice. If we are sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's the choice when you're like, okay, my favorite 2 words, I'm done. And then for you to be able to go into that space and then just start stepping out little by little. It's not a race. Think of a turtle. That's how slow it can be. And you just do that, and then be gentle with yourself and consistent and persistent, and just keep following that process, and absolutely take care of that inner little girl or boy as you're going through that process, and find ways to do that if you don't know how. Then you step into that, and your life, again, from my experience, will absolutely shift and turn. And it's almost like there's the light, the light. There's the light. And that's what you'll see more often. And it's the craziest thing. Even with all the chaos and everything going on in the world, I still see light. And it's like,
Yeah.
So that's probably, and I don't know if I said this, just be gentle with the process and your heart, because your heart deserves that. You deserve it.
Yeah. Be gentle with yourself as you go through the process.
Mhm.
I definitely, that's one of the things I always encourage people to do. Be gentle with yourself. Have patience with yourself. Learn to forgive yourself, because you're going to make some mistakes, but don't be too hard on yourself. This is just part of the process that you have to go through, and you're going to be okay. You're going to
Yeah,
come out
yeah.
the other side. You
And
are.
you don't know what you don't know, so to remember that when you know. Who said that? What is her name? When you know better, you do better. What is her name?
Yes. I wish I knew, but that's been a saying that's been around for quite some time. I'm still
No,
just
and I
like,
can't think of.
I can't remember who said it.
I know it's Oprah. Oprah was like really good friends with her.
Was it Mel
She's
Robbins? Was it Mel Robbins that said it?
no, way before,
No.
way before Mel. Oh my gosh, this is going to drive me crazy now. We'll figure it out after we get off here.
This is
Here.
probably true. This
Yeah.
is so probably.
Just remember the quote: "When you know better, you'll do better." So forgive
I've
me
used this
for
quote. Yeah, I use this quote all the time. Now you see. Now you got me on it.
Okay,
Now
well,
I'm
wait.
gonna
Here,
figure
let's
it out.
use
You
modern
figure it out.
technology. I'm going to use modern technology. I never do this. And we're live. We're live. Here we go.
Here we go.
You hold on. No better. Here we go. I got it. Maya Angelou.
Well, I guess we know now.
Now
There
we
go.
know.
I love that. I love that.
Who does that?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up.
Okay.
This episode, Caroline, we must do this again. Everybody, go check out her YouTube channel. And you know, when I get the information, we'll be in the YouTube channel. But go check her out. Go check out her social media. You know, if you're looking for someone who's going to give you the support that you need and be able to walk with you, Caroline is another amazing person. Like I said, I'm connected with people across the world, some amazing people that are out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. For everyone who have been tuning in, do me a favor. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for tuning in. Secondly, I want to say, if you haven't already, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. Maybe these conversations aren't for you just yet. If you know someone who can benefit from the conversation that we have, do me a favor, connect them with us. We're out here, we're trying to connect and connect with as many people as we can across the world, share this around. And with that being said, you guys already know this is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And as always, you guys always hear me say this. If you're not out there making memories with the people that you love, do so, because tomorrow's not promised. And with that being said, guys, thank you for allowing me to keep bringing these conversations to you guys. And you guys already know I try to do one every day. I'm taking a break for a little bit, so I won't be doing one every day. But just an update. The magazine will be out tomorrow, along with a special edition of The Adventures of Grief Guy. You guys been asking for it. I'm going to put it out there, but I also have 4 more chapters coming out today. So if you're in the Adventures of Grief Guy group, you're going to see those. But tomorrow, keep your eyes out for that as well. And as always, guys, I love you. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Have an amazing day. All right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.